Hello, Georgetown. This is Spotlight Georgetown. I'm Beverly Enos. And this is a cable show spotlighting our community, our people, our events, and what's going on in town. You can catch the show Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. So don't forget to tune in on those days. If you notice something different here today, we have a new set. We have a platform that has been built for us by Chris Rich. Chris is one of my neighbors, and he volunteered to do this for us. He's also on the personnel board, and he's also on the Board of Health. And Chris has been very involved with many things going on in Georgetown. So he built the platform. He and I together, we did the carpeting, and we actually finished that up right here on site. And Premier Builders was wonderful because they trekked it, and they had the muscle to get it upstairs for us here on the third floor. So thank you to Chris Rich and everybody else that participated in getting our new set for us. Now, this week we're going to be talking to Bob Morehouse. Good morning, Bob.
Good
afternoon,
Beverly.
Bob. Now, we're here to talk about CampDenison. But before we get to that, can you tell us a little bit? Most people know you from Wheeler Brook Farm. Some call you Farmer Bob. And you've been involved in many things in Georgetown. So can you give us some of your history and your farm history?
Oh, well, that's easy to do. My family and I moved here in 1965, and we bought a house lot and set up family. Barbara was a former teacher, and the land around us was for sale, so we bought another 14 acres. And our goal was to start a farm. We both came from farming backgrounds. So after the children started to grow up a little bit, Barbara got a job teaching in the elementary school in town. And I continued on with my job at Soil Conservation Service, part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and eventually ended up with EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. So during that time, we also farmed, which I don't know how I did it. It was quite a struggle, but after I got into Boston with EPA, they allowed me to get involved in local affairs. So I got on the planning board. I was on the Pembroke School Building Committee. I was the chairman of the Town Hall Building Committee. I was elected as selectman, the CampDenison Committee, Rail Trail Committee, the Master Plan Committee,
And
a few other things.
And the list goes on and on.
Yeah,
Now, today we are here to talk about CampDenison.
right.
Now, an awful lot of people have never been to CampDenison. They've never visited the property. Can you give us a little bit of history on what CampDenison is or was and how it came to be owned by the town?
Well, that's kind of interesting. First of all, CampDenison is a very beautiful area. I took a walk this morning down the road, and it's quite a sight. But the town acquired 43 acres located on Baldpate Pond. That land had come up for sale, and the town did vote to do it, to buy it. The property is wooded, 43 acres of woodland, and along with the woodland comes some facilities, some buildings. There's a great hall, which is a very large old camping hall. It's got a recreational room, a mess hall, pantry, kitchen, and a meeting room. So it'll accommodate several hundred people. There's also, came with it, were a director's cabin and about a dozen camps. Now, a lot of those camps fell in disrepair, and they were pretty well vandalized before we bought it. So we've destroyed or demolished about 6 of them. And this spring we'll do a little more demolition, and we'll do some fixing up and restore some of those others for camping.
Okay, now, so these were the actual little cabins that the kids would live in?
Yes, it was an overnight facility for an organization in Boston called Dorchester Neighborhood Houses. So they used to truck the kids up from Boston, and they'd overnight them here for weekend programs. So,
And now that was, I remember when I was growing up, Camp Denison was there and it was active at that time. And a lot of people don't realize that there is another pond in Georgetown. And most people can see Pentucket and they can see Rock Pond.
well,
But there is Baldpate Pond behind Baldpate Road.
that's another interesting thing, because the property is located in two towns, Boxford and Georgetown. And the boundary line used to go right through the middle, with Boxford owning the buildings and Georgetown owning all the woodlands. So it was quite interesting, because Boxford had passed a bylaw that said you can't service any houses in Boxford with water.
Okay.
And that meant we couldn't get water in there, public water. They had a well, but that would make it under EPA's rule, a small water supply, which required weekly monitoring and a lot of other things. So Boxford proposed we change the boundary line. So now Georgetown owns up to the edge of Baldpate Pond, where before it wasn't.
Okay. I remember that came up at a town meeting quite a few years ago when this was all still under consideration.
Yeah.
So we actually acquired extra land for the town of Georgetown.
Well, we gave them some other land for that,
Okay. So it was,
which was wetland.
all right. So we still get the better of the deal. Now, what is there now? The buildings that you talked about are still there now, and they have been refurbished?
Yes, we have a lot of volunteers who volunteer their time and have renovated Great Hall. We have almost completed the renovation of the director's cabin, which we're going to use as an environmental center. We've refurbished one of the cabins as a pavilion, which sits out right on the edge near the water. And then there's another 4 cabins and 2 other incendiary buildings, which we're going to renovate this spring or tear them down.
Now, I'm picturing a cabin that would sleep like 4 kids. How big are these cabins? They sound much larger than that.
Well, they're about 16 by 16.
Okay, so they are good size.
Some of them have bunkhouses in, which will accommodate 8 people.
Mm-hmm. Now, what type of amenities does the lodge itself have? It has, the rooms are all finished and it's all water and storage.
I would have to describe them as being rustic.
Rustic? Okay. I actually have been in there, so
Yeah.
rustic is apt.
Actually, the downstairs meeting room is heated, and we have a live-in manager whose apartment is attached to this large building. So these are year-round facilities for meetings and for the camp manager.
Okay, I didn't know that, and
Yeah.
a lot of others probably didn't either. So the meeting room will hold about how many people?
I'd say probably about 40 people. And there's a large fireplace there, so you can have a nice wood fire. And we do host a number of birthday parties there for families that rent the hall.
What a great idea.
And then upstairs is a very large rustic room. Got a big court where they can, play or have meetings, and we use that in the summertime for a workshop in the woods.
And what's Workshop in the Woods?
Workshop in the Woods is a children's program. It runs during the month of July, and people enroll their children in the program where they teach a variety of subjects, community, art, crafts, theater, and they're going to have a writing skills also this summer.
Now, what ages is that for?
Ages from, I think it's 8 to 14 years.
And
it's usually filled to capacity. It's a very popular, very successful program.
And how would people find out about how to enroll in that?
Probably the best way is to go to our website. You could either Google just Camp Denison, or you could go on the World Wide Web and put in CampDenison.com.
Okay.
www.denison.com.
All right.
And then go to the link that talks about Workshop in the Woods.
Okay. Now, we talked about it being on Baldpate Road. Now,
Yes.
exactly where is it? Most people haven't noticed it, because if you're not looking for the Camp Denison sign, you would never realize it's in
Right.
there.
Well, if you went down Central Street or Route 97 south towards Boxford or 95, and before you get to Noonan's on the right is Nelson Street.
Mhm.
There's a lot of Nelson's Avenue and other places in town, but this is Nelson Street. You take a right, and you go down there about half a mile up on top of the hill, you'll see a sign that says Camp Denison, 1931. We have to change that because when you go by it, you think it's a private camp.
That's what it looks
And
like.
we need to say Camp Denison Conservation Area.
Okay.
So if we can get a volunteer who likes to paint,
Always
that'd be a
looking for
good
volunteers.
project.
I think that's what this show is coming to be about, always looking for volunteers.
So then from there, you go into that driveway, and people a lot of times turn around halfway because it's a half mile in.
Yeah. And it's a dirt road.
It's
Basically.
it's a dirt road
Yeah.
primarily. During mud season, sometimes we have to close it. But it's a very, very beautiful road. Halfway down is a trailhead where a lot of trails converge, where you can park your car and walk on the trails. A lot of people park at Nelson Street and walk their dogs in. And then there's a parking lot situated 200 or 300 yards from the lake where you have to walk in to reach the camp.
And
So it's easy to get to,
yep, we know-
year round.
Now we know where it is. Now, what kind of conservation and recreational activities are usually held there, other than this particular camp?
Of course, hiking and using those trails is a big activity. In the wintertime, like right now, snowshoeing and cross-country skiing are likely activities. Those trails go through a large portion of all the woodland, and because of the varied habitats that it passes through, you see lots of flora, fauna, the different forest types. There's some nice geologic areas in there which people could study to understand how the glacier affected our area. There are places where there's nothing but flint, and I think we need to investigate that, whether there are any relics of the Native Americans or not, I'm not sure. It does go down near the lake. Once you reach that area, you probably see a beaver if you're very patient. Near the boat landing is a large beaver lodge, and that keeps growing every year. It gets higher and higher. I bet it's 7 or 8 feet high now. And they continually mound up all these logs and things on top of the beaver lodge. The beaver are also active at the outlet to the pond. There's a large culvert, and they continually are plugging it up so the pond is 2 or 3 feet higher depending on the seasonal runoff.
Now, can people go in there and have a picnic, or?
Yes. So when you get near the lodge, there's a large area for picnics. So there's tables, stone fireplace, pavilion. It's just a nice place for people to connect to nature. Very quiet, very scenic. You don't have to go to New Hampshire to find that. It's right here. In the lodge itself, we do host a lot of events. We've had a number of different people. The Republicans hold an annual fundraiser there with Senator Tarr as the master of ceremonies.
It's the big auction.
Yeah, a big auction. Anybody can go to that. The Cultural Council has held several events there. The fire department, there's just so many groups and organizations that use it. Church groups, Granges, and others who use it.
And now, is there a rental fee for this?
Yes, we do charge a nominal fee which supports the camp. So that is available on the application for the camp itself.
Okay. Now, that would also be on the website. You'll be able to find out about that.
Yeah, that
But
could be.
if somebody wanted to have a party, they could just rent it and have it there.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, what types of groups, other than the local, are there any other larger groups that have come in and used it, or?
We've had groups from many, many towns all around us. I'm not saying that there aren't plenty of vacancies for times, but Workshop in the Woods rents the lodge, or we sponsor them for a month, so that's tied up during the month of July. And then after that, we're pretty flexible. We have one group which we think are coming in this spring called Epic, which is a play group, and they role play ancient, I guess, characters, something like King Arthur's knights.
Oh, neat.
So they'll be renting it for 3 weeks in the springtime. And I guess that's a group of about 50.
Okay, so you have all different types of things that are going on.
Yes.
Are there any restrictions on the use? Things that cannot go on there?
Yeah. Well, obviously, drugs is not allowed.
Obviously.
On the application, it tells you what is allowed. Then, generally speaking, of course, hunting and firearms are not allowed, and we don't allow alcohol at the present time. We don't allow cutting trees or disrespectful type of activities. It's a carry in and carry out facility, so we ask people to take their trash out to keep our expenses down. If you're using the outdoor facilities as a small group, there's no fee. You just come. We'd love to have you. If it's a very large group that's going to take up a large area outside, or if you want to use the hall, you have to make an application out.
Okay, now we're talking about this as conservation land. So this falls under the part of the umbrella of Conservation Committee?
Yes, the property is really managed or overseen by the town.
Okay.
And the Conservation Commission owns it, I guess you could say. The town owns it, but the Conservation Commission is responsible for ownership.
All right, now what does the CampDenison Committee have the responsibilities for?
Well, since the town purchased it, the Conservation Commission has given the responsibility for daily operation and maintenance to the CampDenison Committee. That's a big job. I mean, it's like draining the water pipes in the wintertime so they don't freeze. It's fixing the oil burners. It's repairing the buildings. And the Conservation Commission is really not set up to that.
It's like owning a second home.
Yeah. So they have given that responsibility to us. Our goal at the start of this was to make it self-sufficient. So the town does not support us except for large capital investments like acquisition of additional land. So the fees that people pays for the operation and maintenance of this facility.
So you don't get funding from town meeting or from...
We haven't for 6 or 7 years.
Good, good. So it really has become self-sufficient.
Yes.
Now, the funding comes from people paying to rent the location.
Right.
And are there any other ways to get funds or grants or?
Well, there's a group of us, we call ourselves the Friends of Camp Denison. It's a nonprofit organization. We have an annual dance at the VFW, usually in May. That brings in several $1,000s. So we usually pack the hall, and we have a big auction there and a lot of fun. We have a dance. Jamie Kelly's our local dance master, so that's a big fundraiser for us. Jim Lacey usually donates a couple of tickets to the Red Sox-Yankees game.
Those will always bring in good money.
Yeah, that brings in a few $1,000s.
And people can make individual donations.
Oh yes,
if they wish.
We have how that money works is that the use money goes into a revolving fund in Town Hall. Then we have a donation fund at Town Hall. So that money goes into those funds, which the CampDenison Committee doles out.
As needed. Okay, now, to schedule an event, you said to go on the website?
Yes, you could call the camp manager, Don Anderson, 352-5744.
Okay.
Or you can go on the website, or you could go to the Conservation Commission office downstairs and pick up an application.
and fill it out, send it in, and
Yeah.
then you're all set. All right.
Yes.
Is there anything that we've missed? We did miss talking about something. Some more on the history. Something about they found a body or something buried, or
We haven't found any bodies yet.
okay.
Well,
The good old folklore of Camp Denison.
yeah, there's a lot of history known, or a lot more to be known for sure. While clearing the trails, we thought we had uncovered a grave site. I think that is in error after more research. But there is some interesting history there. Part of that land used to be owned by American Woolen Company. They probably bought it because of the water rights or the potential for water rights. In any case, we have found some foundations there and hand-dug wells, you know, the stoned-up lined wells. We did some research on that, and we found there was a farm family that lived there. So there was a barn and there was a house. During the influenza period, where people were dying from influenza, they used that house as a pest house. You probably never heard of a pest house. Well, they thought that influenza might be passed from smoke from chimneys. And that was so far out in the country that if they put the flu victims down there, they wouldn't contaminate the rest of the town since they were far enough away.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of an interesting thing, I thought. So perhaps some of those people did die and they may have been buried there. So the jury's still out.
Okay.
But we'd love to find a volunteer who would research the history. We've got lots of leads, but not much time.
Okay. Now, volunteers, they can just call you, or they can call...
Yeah, they ought to call me. That's 352-8289.
All right, 8289 for Bob Morehouse. And
Yeah.
thank you very much for coming. And you have been a wonderful guest. And
I would
hope-
just like to add one more thing
Sure.
about volunteers. We have about 20 men who meet there every Tuesday morning and volunteer their time, summer and winter. And a lot of women volunteer for the dance and other types of activities. But every Tuesday morning, you'll find a lot of us down there working at the camp, and we'd love to have anyone interested.
So all they have to do is show up.
Show up.
All right. And now, do you still do the meetings even in the morning?
Yes.
Oh, I mean, even in the winter?
Yes, we were meeting there. We were down there yesterday, so.
All right. Okay. Again, thank you, Bob.
Well,
thank you
thanks
very much
inviting
for
me.
coming.
This is Bob Morehouse. I'm very glad that you asked us here.
Thank you. This is Beverly Enos for Spotlight Georgetown. Don't forget to tune in Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Thanks for joining us. See you soon.